Hello again, and welcome to the Multiverse Mic. I am one of your hosts, Brian, and I'm here with my good friends, Jacob.
Hello, I'm here.
And I'm here with Taylor.
And I'm here too.
And we're here to bring you all the wonderful stories in the world of nerddom. We're talking movies, we're talking TV shows, comics, video games, all of those things that help you scratch that nerdy itch. We're here to deliver on that. And today, one of our favorite topics, we're bringing back Star Wars again because, I mean, come on, Star Wars, I think, is what got all of us into this world of nerddom. And, you know, we talked about movies in one of our previous episodes, but we're going to be diving a little bit more into the TV shows today, not necessarily to rank them, but to just talk about kind of the state of Star Wars TV, some of the things that we've liked recently, some of the things that maybe we haven't liked so much recently, and just kind of what our overall takes and favorites are over the course of Star Wars television. So, you know, why don't we throw this out to Jacob first? And Jacob, I just want to hear a little bit about kind of what are some of your big hits as far as Star Wars TV goes.
The biggest hit for me is Mandalorian. I think is like I personally think is the best Star Wars live action show. I think is what I'm kind of hitting with right now. I just enjoy the characters they've introduced, the characters they brought back. Kind of teasing Rebels a little bit, and then getting more into Ahsoka. That's a little bit later, but definitely Mandalorian is my go-to Star Wars live action show. Sadly, I haven't finished Andor yet, though, so I'm sure you guys will have more to say about that. But yeah, that's where I'm at.
Taylor, let's throw it to you.
Yeah, I have to say that The Mandalorian is definitely the one that's knocked it out of the park, and I'll have to say that really, I'm going to give a lot of props to Filoni and Favreau for that. You know, their teamwork up on this thing and how they've handled. At least season 1 was really good. Season 2, there was some issues there, but they're trying stuff. You know, they're doing well. They're doing well with what they have, and they can kind of push the needle a little bit. They were kind of I guess they kind of set the bar for the other shows. I mean, maybe that's why some of the other shows haven't quite met that mark. But they're not terrible. The other shows, there's some that not great, but
the Acolyte,
yeah, we'll get there. But yeah, I have to say that The Mandalorian definitely is my favorite one that's come out so far.
Yeah, I'd have to say that it's a close tie for me. Maybe not a tie, but it's really close between Mandalorian and between Rebels. So, and I know we're talking live action and we're talking animated here. Yeah, but
right.
Mandalorian, I think overall, it's going to be my favorite, but very, very close second is Rebels. And I'm going to touch on a couple other things here. I think that the Clone Wars animated series has some of my favorite high spots of any Star Wars TV, but it's also got some of the lowest low spots too. I'm talking, the droid episode specifically.
I was just going to say the droid episode probably.
I think those are the high spots for me. And, kind of want to throw this in here. It's not quite so much a TV show, but the original Clone Wars micro series. Did you guys ever watch that?
Yes.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It was more of like a,
they'd show
Samurai
like
Jack 5
or so minutes at a time.
Yeah.
But that's something you can binge in just like an hour or so. But that I think I don't even think it's canon anymore, but it's just got a lot of really fun action sequences.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I just like that style of animation. I think that's why I liked that show Samurai Jack so much. It felt like a different kind of anime that a different style of drawing, and I really enjoyed.
Yeah. So for me, we'll kind of take it back to the Mandalorian here. One of the reasons that I like the Mandalorian so much is partially because I was kind of into the Mandalorian lore beforehand, kind of the backstory of like Boba Fett and all that before the canon backstory came out, but just seeing them use the different aspects of the Mandalorian armor and just bring it into the Mandalorian Warriors code. And they've got some really good action set pieces, but they also tie some great pieces of other Star Wars lore into what's going on with that. So I think that's one of the big reasons that it hit so well for me, not to mention Grogu.
Yeah. No, I remember that being just kind of a big surprise.
Yeah, Grogu definitely brought a lot to it, but for me it was the Mandalorian culture in general, just getting to see where they were going to take the new canon to, because I knew a lot about the old canon, about all this stuff, and I mean my phone is even like I love the Mandalorian stuff and everything about it. For me the way that in general, just Star Wars in general, you got Jedi are always going to be on top, but for me, right underneath of it's going to be that Mandalorian culture of the two things that make me love Star Wars so much. Yeah,
That's awesome.
Yeah, no, I'd agree 100% with that, because for me, some of the other series that maybe don't quite delve so much into the Force aspect, and they don't have a lot of the combat. I know, I mean, it's not necessarily what Star Wars is all about, but for me, that's kind of what draws me into it. So those are the aspects that I really enjoy, and the Mandalorian kind of scratches both those itches in a sense.
exactly.
Now, as far as the Mandalorian goes, that's kind of on the higher end of the spectrum there. But we want to also talk about some of the lower ends of the Star Wars spectrum here. Jacob, you mentioned it
Acolyte.
just a moment ago. Acolyte is just so. Let me maybe set the preface here. When the Acolyte was first announced, it sounded like the absolute coolest show.
I was excited.
I mean, it was supposed to be a show about the Sith, kind of coming about in the ages before, while the rule of two was still, prevalent. The Sith had not yet revealed themselves as the Jedi. There's just a lot of intrigue about that. And it sounded like, I don't know what I was expecting, but it was not what I was expecting in the slightest.
No.
I will give the Acolyte props. It had some good action sequences.
Yeah.
But the rest of it was just such a mess. The story didn't make any sense. There was logic gaps in just about every single episode, multiple times. None of the characters made any sense either. Their motivations for everything. That's just, how do we get from plot point A to plot point B? Let's just randomly throw a character in there and see what happens.
Exactly. It felt like they kind of just were thrown the idea and they're like, let's give it to these people. And I felt like nothing was truly talked about ahead of time. Like, is this what would really happen? Is this where we should go with this? The answer to most of the questions, if you really had asked, people, no, that's not the way you should have taken that. Yeah. And they had such a good concept of what, we were so excited for, was like you said, the Sith, and it just flopped. They didn't scratch that itch that you were talking about. The Sith, when I think of the Sith, I think of like the old Bane books.
So
have you read
good.
those?
Right.
Like that's what I think of
They
when I
should have
think of
done
Sith.
that. That would have been so sick.
And I feel like they still have the opportunity to go back and cover that story. I hope they do, but that's for another video.
Oh man, that'd be so sick.
It, as bad as the Acolyte was, it kind of speaks to a larger picture of trouble that Star Wars has been through for the last several years. And, we talked a little bit about this in our last episode, but the general lack of direction that Star Wars has gone under the past several, 10 years at this point, right?
Yeah.
So,
that's crazy.
Star Wars hasn't had a real good direction. Some of this stuff under Dave Filoni has had a little bit better of a direction. Not all of the stuff that he's done has been great, but at least they had an idea of where they wanted to go with it. You could see the story.
Yeah. And I feel like for that, it's because, Dave Filoni was, he was George Lucas's protege. He studied under George Lucas. Like, if I love listening to his stories of how he just sat there and just listened to George talk about Star Wars basically. And, and the other thing is that Filoni is willing to listen. I love hearing, who's the actor for
Maul?
For Maul, yeah.
It's Sam Witwer.
Sam Witwer, yeah. I love hearing his stories, and because Sam Witwer is like a super fan of Star Wars.
Right. Super Star Wars nerd, yeah.
And he's like, well, actually, and Dave's like, oh, yeah, you're right. And so, in that, he's at least humble enough to be like, yeah, you're right. We should do it the correct way. And, I think that's where Filoni gets it right.
Yeah. And, to speak a little bit more about Filoni, I heard him say something really intelligent in an interview a while ago, because before he was associated with The Mandalorian, he had never done anything live action. It had only been animation up to that point. And so when you take somebody from animation into live action, it's like learning a completely different art style. right? There's not a lot of things that
Right.
translate over. So what he did is I can't remember the exact quote, but he said something along the lines of, he's deferring to other people that know what they're doing so we could learn from them. And that makes me have a lot of faith in the projects that he's doing, because he's willing to take a step back and learn from others that have been there before. And, that's part of the reason him and Favreau make such a great pairing together, because Favreau obviously does have a lot of experience with live action. So,
Exactly.
seeing those two work together on The Mandalorian has been mostly, a really good, strong showing for The Mandalorian.
Yeah.
So for me, I did want to tie this back a little bit and play devil's advocate just a bit here. Because Mandalorian is such a strong part of the Star Wars universe for us, but it's not without its faults. And I think in particular, season 2 is kind of a mess.
Yeah, it's all over the place.
And everybody loves to talk about how great season 2 was, but I think the only the only reason people really mention that is because of Luke Skywalker showing up at the end of the season.
Right.
If that hadn't happened, I don't think that people will be all in love with season 2.
Exactly. I was going to say that was the only thing that really made me truly like season 2.
Mm-hmm.
But
and the episode with Boba Fett.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Which we can get off on a tangent about how terrible Boba Fett was too.
I know, but that's such a strong episode though. Like, it was such a strong moment where I'm like, this is so cool. It's straight out of Parks and Rec, where he was saying in front of all those people, where he was like, and then his hand comes out of the sand, and he just called it how cool it would be for that to happen. And I was like, oh, yeah, it's happening.
I mean, if you go back into the old lore books, Boba Fett is one of the coolest characters ever. He's hardly on screen at all in the original trilogy, but all the extended books that were written about Boba Fett made him one of the coolest characters ever. He's John Wick, right?
Right.
So once you get to Mandalorian and the first season comes out, they made Mandalorian in what Boba Fett was in the books. So by the time you actually bring Boba Fett in there, you can't just have two characters that are the exact same person.
Mm-hmm.
So I can see why they changed it. I just really hate the way that they went about and did it. They made Boba Fett whiny, and they made him incompetent in so many different areas. There is no, and the Vespa gang.
Yeah, the Power Ranger looking yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah, I mean, I watched Boba Fett just because Boba Fett is one of my favorite characters, like you said there. But I remember sitting there watching with my wife, being like, I don't know, I'm a little disappointed. But the sad part is that the episodes that Mando came in were, I feel like, the better episodes. It kind of started feeling more like he was pushing Boba Fett to get back to his roots, his training that he did with his dad, and
right. Yeah.
They kind of brought all that up.
Yeah, I think that's why I liked, there's pieces of it I liked, but overall I didn't feel like it was a great show. But yeah, especially towards the end, where the big battle sequences I thought were pretty awesome, like the riding a Rancor, all that
Danny
stuff.
Trejo and the Rancor.
Yeah, that was awesome. Yeah.
I am kind of curious what you guys think about the Ahsoka show, because I know some people love it, some people hate it. What do you guys stand on the Ahsoka series?
You, Taylor.
It felt so. The beginning kind of felt slow, and
that's what I was gonna say.
The parts with Sabine and her Jedi training, just I didn't quite get it, and I get, they're trying to, I guess the idea was that anybody could be a Jedi, which didn't really make any sense to me. Like, there was nothing pointing in Rebels. Well, I watch all of Rebels. There was nothing in there I saw that pointed to her being Force sensitive at all. So when they come back and she's doing Jedi training, when she got gifted the lightsaber, or took the lightsaber, I should say, and kind of claimed it, I thought that was just her being a Mandalorian and being able to use any weapon, because that's something that a Mandalorian can do. They're just that skilled. They can use any weapon. I thought that's where they were going with that. Not that she was Force sensitive, and then she is, and I'm like,
or that they really wanted her to be force sensitive.
Exactly.
Like, just try harder, and then you'll do it.
Exactly. I feel like that part of the story, that storyline, kind of tainted the show a bit. But what brought it back was the kind of entrance into the world between worlds. The kind of like, and I don't know if
so
they were
you
truly...
like that aspect then.
I did. I liked that they kind of brought that, because that was one of my favorite story arcs, or part of the arcs of Rebels. When they entered that, it brought off something that was wholly new and felt, like they're touching to new territory. I wasn't sure at first, but I started kind of liking it, and then they brought it to live action. I know there's a lot of theories that they might do it, and when they did, I was like, kind of like, okay, let's see where this goes. And I don't know, I just feel like it kind of added a little bit, but I like that part a lot more than the Sabine Jedi training parts. So.
No, yeah, I agree with that. Like, that's what I was gonna say, is the Sabine part. But I like Sabine though. That's why I was really hoping for, like, when every new episode came out, I was like, okay, drop the Jedi stuff. Like, she's just a really a really good, like, good with combat, good with different weapons, like you were saying. Like, I don't care if she has a lightsaber, that's cool. But like, it's just the whole, like, oh, if she just tries hard enough, she could use the Force. I don't need Sabine to use the Force to be cool. Like, and I was just gonna leave that to Ahsoka, since the show is about her. But I did like the character and the actress that played Sabine. I thought that was awesome. But yeah, no, I agree. And then I liked the world between worlds. I just didn't like I just didn't understand, like, how she got there, because she, like, fell and then just happened to be in it, like almost like a portal in the ocean kind of a thing. I thought it was a little cooler, like how there's an actual, like, Force wolf door thing that they had to use to get into. And but yeah, I thought that the concept was cool. I don't know if they're gonna, like, go there again. I don't know if that was just Dave Filoni going, what if we did this? This would be kind of cool. Just kind of his inner nerd playing with these actor toys that he's just kind of doing.
His actor toys.
It's kind of, he's just like now,
that.
and now let's make some live action Rebels. But yeah, no, I thought that was pretty cool. I liked it more when Thrawn came in to play. After reading the books.
Here's my issues with Ahsoka, because I really like it and I really dislike it at the same time. So for me, Ahsoka, the series, relies heavily on the fact that Star Wars lore. If you haven't seen Rebels, and if you haven't gone into the comics and the books and all the extended universe stuff, you're going to get lost. I watched it with my wife, and she was asking me questions all the time. It did.
Who's that?
She was lost. So,
and on the flip side of that, I
on the flip side of
wife.
that,
well, I watched it with my wife, who is a massive Ahsoka fan, and so she loved the entire thing, except for the same thing that we're talking about with Sabine. But as you were saying,
I was going to say, it relies on the fact that you need to have all this knowledge of Star Wars lore. But for those of us that have a lot of Star Wars lore, it's not paying a lot of it off. I feel like so Ahsoka is a wonderful character throughout Clone Wars and throughout Rebels. And she makes all these progressions into becoming the character that we love, right? Ahsoka is really annoying when she first gets introduced in Clone Wars, and she becomes one of the coolest characters by the end of Rebels. All those cool steps that she took, she's just all of a sudden forgotten about all the lessons that she's learned. And she's got to start all over with these lessons here. She doesn't have confidence in herself anymore. She doesn't know kind of where the Force is taking her after she made all these decisions about how she's going to disconnect herself from the Jedi, and she's going to be just kind of like Qui-Gon was originally supposed to be one with the living Force. But it seems like now that there's all these people that may not have seen the animated series, now we got to start over and retell these stories.
Yeah, no, I get that point. That's a good point.
You're wrong, but I'm just
no. That's a good point.
No, I agree.
I agree with it. You're saying, like, if I hadn't watched all of those shows, I would definitely be like, I'm not watching season 2. I'm not going to continue with this. Who's this blue guy? All this stuff. So. Yeah, I've read all these books leading up to these things. All watched all the shows leading up to these things. So yeah, of course I loved all of that. Getting I guess, seeing the kind of unsure of herself. I think the thing for me was the introduction of Balin.
Yeah,
Oh,
see,
yeah.
I was going to get
So
there.
Bane's
I
cool.
I feel like his introduction is what made her like for me that's where it made her like unsure of herself and unsure of the direction she was going, because he was kind of on the like dark side of version of what she was trying to do, and
Right.
it kind of made her think, and so how powerful he was, but he wasn't fully turned to the dark side. That kind of like threw her off, like, what is this?
Yeah.
Am I doing the right thing? And I feel like that's where her confliction started happening.
And that's
And
one
see,
thing. Oh yeah, go ahead, Dave, Brian.
I was going to say, the thing that really got me on board with the Ahsoka series was Balin Skull. I think he was the absolute best part of that show.
So cool.
And just to go back to what you were saying, Ahsoka left the Jedi Order.
Mm-hmm.
She's not dark side, but
Yeah.
she's not light side, right? I mean,
Right.
she's light side, but she's not Jedi.
Right.
Balin Skull is the exact opposite.
Mm-hmm.
He's not a Sith. He's a former Jedi that's leaning towards the dark, but he doesn't embrace the Sith ways. Right. He just uses, I mean, splitting hairs here, but he's using the Force for his own personal gain rather than for
others,
any sort of orders
mm-hmm.
that he's following.
In unofficial terms, he's a dark Jedi, and that's
right.
And that's what got me so excited about that character, because every dark Jedi you meet is usually one of the most like, care nothing about anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't feel like that to me. They felt like he was doing something for a purpose. That's what he's a mystery to me. He's different than any dark Jedi I've ever heard about.
Yeah, he actually cares for his apprentice.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what I wanted to learn more about him. And
yeah, that's one thing with Ahsoka that season, though, that was like, I think I had a lot of questions that weren't answered, and I'm sure like Dave Filoni knows that, and all the if he had different directors for each episode, or like, it's just that I'm impatient and I want to know where this is going, because like after reading like all of the Thrawn books, like and then the Ascendancy books, and then kind of delving into all the which isn't canon. Well, I don't know, is Bane's canon because of that cartoon?
Yeah,
I don't know about like his past, but so Bane is canon.
The
but
character himself is canon.
Yeah.
Okay. Like, and then they kind of touch on just like, I don't know, they touch on the past, and I'm just like really anxious to see what's happening. But then there's talk about like almost basically a Rebels reunion, because all these characters are going to be coming together, which is awesome. I almost want it to be like its own thing though, because I want to see where like Ahsoka goes with all this, and like leave like the rest of it out of it. But at the same time, I get, because now that Thrawn's back in the galaxy, and I don't know if they're going to tie in the books at all. But I know that Dave Filoni's a fan of all these things, but I know he also has people probably to please too, and probably a schedule and stuff. But yeah, I'm anxious, and I just really want to know where this is going. Like, where is this place? So like what, I see the the father figure, the son and like the daughter or whatever, which is it the daughter that was destroyed though?
The mother was destroyed.
The mother was destroyed. Which, are we talking like Abeloth thing?
Right.
Into, yeah.
Deep cuts.
I want to know. It ended like that. Me going, what? No, more.
That's what's getting me excited for season 2, and seeing where they're going to take that. It's unfortunate that actor
Ray Stevens
passed, but who did they get to? Who they recast?
Rory McCann. So he was the Hound in Game of Thrones.
Yeah,
I guess Rory McCann and I just forgot his name.
That guy.
Ray
Stevens. Thank you.
Stevens, yeah.
Ray Stevens, Rory McCann. I guess they were actually good friends in real life.
Oh, that's awesome.
So if there's somebody that can encompass that character, it's somebody that actually was good friends with the actor in off camera. So
yeah, I was really excited about that recasting decision, and not just leaving the story. I thought that's something they could have done. It's just he left, and if you knew where he was heading, what he was heading into, it's kind of like, okay, he's going into something that may not ever get touched on, but if you're a fan of the show, a fan of the previous shows, you know where he's going, what his goal was, and I feel like they could have left it there and just kind of been a little bit of a mystery. Star Wars isn't something to shy away from mysteries too. We never learned what Yoda's species is ever called.
Right.
That's a mystery right there. There's a lot of little things, and there's some things that we'll probably never actually find out.
That's an episode right there.
Exactly. And but they recast it and means that they're going to continue the story. Got me really excited.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they definitely had a vision for something.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, we're obviously all three of us really excited for the next season of Ahsoka. As far as we know, that's the only Star Wars TV that's set to come out. There's nothing else that's on the schedule to come out, at least officially.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh, officially, yeah.
Officially. I mean, there's lots of rumored things.
Rumors, yeah.
But as far as things that are actually happening, it's Ahsoka season 2. Andor was just 2 seasons. That's all they're do. Of course,
Yeah.
Spoilers. Andor dies in Rogue One.
Oh my god, that's it. Logging off.
I don't see them doing any more Boba Fett. Season 1 was bad enough. They're not going to continue it.
No more,
I don't see them doing another
Acolyte.
season of Obi-Wan, which we didn't even touch on Obi-Wan today. But
Well, the Obi-Wan, that I almost see that because it's a mini series. It's not really truly a, it's, I guess so is Boba Fett, but we can touch on it a little bit. That was much better than, because
The Acolyte.
of all, exactly. Well, I don't know. I was unsure what they were going to do with that, because especially when you find out that he's going to meet Vader, and how are they going to stay true to canon that's already set, in the movies. And they're very clear about the movies having kind of their own specific canon. Like you
right.
Once it's in the movies or in the shows, it's got to stay the same. And if it's off, then where are you going? What are you doing? And I feel like they did a very good job at staying and answering questions that they actually were presenting themselves. They presented a question, but then they answered it. And the kind of seeing Obi-Wan kind of like fight with his own demons, of being, just like feeling like he's casting away the Jedi, or is he? And so he's kind of like, is he going to be a Jedi or is he not going to be a Jedi the whole time?
Yeah.
And then by the end of the series, like, he's back. Yeah.
Yeah. To me, I've got really mixed feelings on that one,
Mm-hmm.
as apparently do with everything in Star Wars. No, so I thought they told a good story with the Obi-Wan series, but I feel like they had this story that they wanted to make. And I think it was when Chapek was still in charge. He said, make it a TV show.
Yeah, because
you
it
got
was
to have
that
this
movie,
many
wasn't it?
episodes.
You can make it
I think
longer.
they were talking about making it a movie originally. But see, it's like 6 episodes, and they're like barely a half hour each. So you've got a movie there. You just cut out some of the fluff, which you can find good cuts of it online. It's a movie that was chopped up into a TV show with no natural flow for actually it being a TV show, which kind of dampens the experience of watching it. So as a movie, if you watch any of those cuts, they're really solid.
Yeah.
It's a great movie. But when you watch 25 minutes at a time, week to week, it doesn't flow very well. And the story just gets kind of convoluted. So, I mean, nothing really we can do about that at this point, but
yeah, I feel like
I guess I've always got something to complain about with these things.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and like you said, with it's pretty much, there's not going to be, everything's not going to be foolproof, right? And all this, they're touching on a very, very big fandom that we feel we've been part of this fandom for most of our lives, and if not all of our lives. And it's we feel like if you don't stay true to the heart of Star Wars, you're kind of doing a disservice to the fans itself. But then again, it is a story. It's a story that needs to be, it's going to be told in any way, and you can't make everybody happy. And I feel like that they've also taken that too far on some of the things, they know they're not going to make everyone happy, but don't go out of your way to, tick us off, So it's like, and there's some things, some directions they've gone where it's like, you didn't need to do that. That was unnecessary.
Yeah. So we've been talking a little while about these Star Wars TV shows. So we're going to wrap things up here in just a couple of minutes. But before we do that, I actually wanted to just kind of put you guys on the spot here. And I want to know first, what is your single worst moment in Star Wars television?
Moment?
Yeah. It could be anything at all, from any of the series, live action, animated. Maybe it's a character, maybe it's a scene, maybe it's an episode of something.
So leading up to this, I was just making sure I'd watched most, if not all of the Andor season 2. Jacob, I don't know how far you've gotten.
Not far enough.
Not far enough. There is a scene.
It's okay. It's over. Like I should have watched it. So that's on me.
This, I'm going to give a little warning here. What I'm going to talk about it can be a little triggering. This scene, I felt like they may have went a bit too far. And it's a scene where Bix is cornered by an Imperial officer, and he attempts to rape her. I feel like there's just I get it's a real world thing, and I guess this is the darkest show that they have. Andor is probably the darkest Star Wars show they have, and they definitely push that needle as far as they can, and staying in there. And she actually even says the word rape, and it just,
it takes you out of it.
It does. It kind of like, I'm like, oh, what's happening, and I like,
and then you're like, oh yeah, I'm watching Star Wars.
Yeah, exactly. And
it's
then they
so
get
out
back
of
to
character
it.
for Star Wars. Yeah.
Yeah.
Jacob, do you have anything?
I didn't like the bikes, the guys on the bikes and the Boba
Fett gang.
Oh,
I did not like that. I didn't like that at all. I didn't
man.
like it when they started introducing these characters. I was like I know that there are characters that like augment themselves in like cool ways for like cool reasons, but they're just like this gang, like that. I don't know. The vibe about them is the kind that go in the streets and they're like, it's like I don't know. They felt like a greaser gang.
Greaser
or something.
gang.
I didn't like that. And then he uses them. I'm like, oh my goodness. I was like, of all the people of all the people you could probably find in the underworld, the crime world, you're like you young adults or teenagers, whatever they are technically. But yeah, I thought that was dumb. I don't know. A lot of I know I kept saying the Acolyte a lot, and there's a reason. It's because like I'm following the High Republic books, and I know they try to jump ahead. We're like, well, it's ahead of the book series, but like still right before the fall of the Jedi. But there's so many things, like it's almost like they didn't read the books like at all. And they just took a character out of one of those books and was like, oh, look, they're still alive because they can live that long. Isn't that cool? And then they have like a completely different character, like to themselves, and like just like things they were doing in the High Republic era. That was like everything I read about the High Republic era, even if it is like 100 or 50 years later from that book, like they wouldn't do that, especially like whatever is about to lead up to why the Jedi are the way they are in Episode 1. But yeah, I feel like that didn't explain anything at all. And then the whole bleeding of the crystal, I think that was also one of my other ones where I was like, she did that pretty easily just because it just broke the hilt and just turns red. I was like, I don't know, even just the comic where like Anakin has to do that, it looked pretty intense.
I've got issues with the whole bleeding crystal thing. Why was Anakin's crystal not bled after he slaughtered thousands of children?
Not good enough.
Not dark enough.
It was just one more kill he needed to make.
One more.
Yeah. No, it's because he hesitated.
Yeah.
And with that little kid, Master Skywalker.
You shouldn't let him talk.
So I'm going to piggyback off of the Acolyte.
Yeah.
But I'm going to context this with saying one of the aspects of some of the expanded Star Wars stuff that I really like is the Night Sisters. The Night Sisters are really awesome, and the fact that they kind of introduce this idea that there's different ways of accessing the Force. It's not just what the Jedi and Sith are using. The Night Sisters found a way to channel the Force in a way that they call magic, but it's a different way of accessing the Force. So these Night Witches were a really cool part of Clone Wars. And then you go to the Acolyte, and we get the Temu version of the Night Sisters.
And they still suck. Yeah, exactly. And
it was so terrible. I'm just going to leave it at that. I don't want to talk about it anymore. The Temu Night Sisters are my absolute worst thing about Star Wars TV. So
I'm going to use that. That's great.
We're not going to end this episode off something terrible. Now I want to know what your favorite moment is from Star Wars television. I've already got mine. So while you guys are thinking, okay. My absolute favorite, and this is actually, it's an arc. It's in the Clone Wars. So it's the Siege of Mandalore. So when Darth Maul takes over Mandalore and he's got the Darksaber, and they're, the Jedi are trying to infiltrate and take back Mandalore, and you have the whole arc with Obi-Wan and Satine, which ballsy for a Star Wars cartoon to kill off one of the main characters.
Yeah.
But then the whole thing with Sidious finally sensing what's happening and going to confront Maul, and that I don't know, that whole series, those episodes, that's my favorite part about Star Wars TV.
Yeah, they really did some stuff that I didn't think they were going to do. I didn't think they were going to ever have the Emperor, or at the time Palpatine, meet Darth Maul again. I thought he would die off somewhere else in space, but no, I thought that was awesome. I forgot about that.
And the fact that they kept the fight as one-sided as they did. Yeah,
seriously.
All right, what are you guys thinking? A lot of things to choose from.
Yeah. I think like one of mine was the crate dragon. Is that what that giant creature is called?
Yeah. And Mandalorian.
That was so cool. I didn't know how that would look. I know it's in an older game. Was it
Knights of the Old Republic?
Was it Knights of the Republic?
I was going to say it.
Yeah. So I was curious what they were going to make it look like. Were they going to make it smaller? And then it was like a cave, and the whole thing came out, and they had to blow it up. I was like, this is so sick. I thought that's how Star Wars shows.
Inside.
Yeah, exactly.
And what's great about that is I feel like that was a direct callback to Knights of the Old Republic, because that's exactly how they had to kill the Krayt Dragon in that game. That's the only way they could, is they had to blow it up. And that, I feel like that was so perfectly directed and so perfectly written that it felt like almost felt like a little love note to the fans, the real fans who have been around for a long time. Okay, so it's really hard for me to pick, but I guess in all these things, if I have to pick one for me specifically, it has to be the thing that saved Mandalorian season 2, and it was the entrance of Luke Skywalker, and watching him just be a one-man army and see how far, see him go to town, and watch the fear on Moff Gideon's face, and watch him try to kill himself. He'd rather kill himself than have to face Luke Skywalker. He is so afraid. Watching this guy who has been one step ahead of the main character for the entire season, and then watch him just be like, "Oh crap, it's over. I'm dead." This guy killed, in his eyes, this guy killed the Emperor. This guy killed Vader. Right? So that's what he sees. He's like, "I'm done for."
Yeah. Well, I didn't think it would be that intense. Like if no, and I didn't know it was Luke at the time, obviously, or like you always sense that when you see the X-wing, but still, like when you see him, you're like, dang, it's like the way he's moving. You watch the older movies, and of course it's the older movies, and that's not, like, we didn't know what direction they were going to go back then, but still, like, to almost see him like upgrade, where he's like, I've learned a little bit, I've been using this thing for a little while, and then using the Force the way he did, like crushing. I was like, isn't that like a like if you were talking like proper Jedi, like that's not necessarily like the Jedi way is to crush even a robot like that.
And I remember people were asking about that, and he said technically he used Force choke in Return of the Jedi.
Yeah,
he did. Yeah,
and they're like, well, yeah, it's how he uses it. And that's how his Jedi sees the Force. If he's using it in a good way, is it really inherently evil? But yeah, that has to be my favorite part.
All good choices. There's so many wonderful scenes that come about in the Star Wars TV shows, and talked a lot about what our favorite scenes are, but our question is for all of you that are watching and listening at home. What are your favorite scenes in the Star Wars TV show? What are your favorite series? What are the worst parts of Star Wars TV? Let us know about it in the comments section down below if you're watching on YouTube. If you are listening through one of the podcast apps, we do appreciate you giving us a 5-star review. That goes a long way into helping spread the podcast around to other people. Watching on YouTube, again, give us a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. We are the Multiverse Mike. Want to say thanks for hanging out with us, and until next time, we'll see you around.
Bye.
All right.